welcome back to our channel. Don't spend that dime just yet. Coins from 1977, 1984, 2008, and 2020 can carry rare flaws that collectors pay big for. Like and subscribe for the details. In 1977, the United States Mint, ever the symbol of precision in production, pushed out millions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. That year, the Roosevelt dime continued its role as a workhorse of American currency. With its familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, it served not only as a tool of commerce but also as a quiet reminder of national ideals, freedom, peace, and strength. The coin was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Most of these coins would go on to live ordinary lives, rattling in vending machines, collecting dust in change drawers, vanishing between couch cushions. But not all, among those countless dimes, an anomaly emerged. It wasn't loud. It didn't gleam with an obvious error like a missing design element or a bold misstrike. Instead, it whispered its rarity, a delicate misalignment here, an unusual thickness there. One such coin sat unnoticed in a dusty cigar box in a Michigan attic for years. It had been tossed there without ceremony, alongside nickels and quarters from the same decade. The man who found it had inherited the box after his father passed away. On a slow, rainy evening, he decided to sift through the coins, if only for nostalgia's sake. What caught his attention wasn't the shine or the color, but the date. Something about the number 7 in 1977 looked off. Under better lighting, he noticed the final two digits appeared slightly thicker than the rest. They almost shimmered under close inspection, like a faint echo sat beneath the surface. Curious, he pulled out a magnifying glass and tilted the coin side to side. The closer he looked, the more obvious it became, doubling. A soft, almost ghostly doubling on the final 7. He flipped the coin and examined the reverse. The lettering on United States of America looked misaligned. Not drastically, but enough that the edges of some letters bled into the rim. The torch, typically sharp and symmetrical, had uneven flame tips, as if the die that struck it had weakened during the press. That he took the coin to a local dealer, not expecting much. The dealer was cautious at first but pulled out a high-powered loop and then a scale. He measured the coin's thickness, tested the metal, and finally, checked the reeded edge. What he found startled him. The coin was slightly overweight, not significantly, but beyond the mint's acceptable variance. This hinted at a possible planchet issue. More importantly, the die alignment on the reverse was rotated just a few degrees clockwise. That alone was enough to warrant further investigation. The coin was submitted to a well-respected grading agency. When the results came back, the report noted several anomalies: machine doubling on the obverse, a misaligned reverse die, a slight planchet thickness irregularity, and, most importantly, rotation error of 4.2 degrees. It was subtle, nearly invisible without tools, but unmistakable to trained eyes. The grader labeled it as an obverse machine doubling with minor reverse rotation strike error. Graded mint state 65, the coin now had a story. Soon, news of this error spread within collector communities. Forums lit up with speculation. Was this a one-off mistake? Could there be more 1977 dimes with similar flaws? As others scoured their old rolls and stashes, similar examples began to surface. Some bore only one feature, like the rotated reverse. Others showed dramatic doubling on the "In God We Trust" motto or the letters "Liberty" bleeding slightly into the field. A retired banker from Oregon discovered a specimen with a full cut on the obverse rim between 1 and 2 o'clock, right above Roosevelt's head. The metal had spilled outward, leaving the edge malformed but strangely intact. This coin, sent for grading, came back MS-64 and fetched $21,000 at a regional coin show. Another example emerged from a former postal worker in Illinois. He'd saved coins for decades, and in one old mint roll, he discovered a 1977 dime with a die crack running from Roosevelt's chin all the way into the 1 in the date. This coin, authenticated and preserved in a tamper-proof case, sold quietly through a private auction $4.26,500. Perhaps the most captivating specimen came from a Florida collector who had meticulously catalogued every coin he'd handled since 1975. He noticed a particular 1977 dime that showed a rare off-center strike, about 10% shifted toward the southeast edge. The rim was incomplete, and part of United States of America had been pushed into the blank field. Despite its slightly circulated state, this error drew major attention. The off-center combined with a rotated reverse gave it a dual error status. It sold for an astonishing $48,000 after a short bidding war. As word continued to spread, collectors began treating the 1977 Roosevelt dime with renewed respect. It had quietly become one of the more intriguing coins of its era. Unlike dramatic minting blunders that were often caught and scrapped, the errors of 1977 dimes were subtle, often missed, and now incredibly rare. They existed in small numbers, scattered across the country in change jars, forgotten drawers, and unopened bank rolls. Each one held clues, minor shifts, faint doubling, off-axis strikes, that told the story of the machinery behind the coin's birth, faltering just enough to leave its mark. One final revelation cemented the coin's mystique. A Texas-based error specialist obtained a dime with all the known error traits rolled into one. It had a slightly rotated reverse, visible doubling on the last 7, and a light die clash on the obverse, where details from the reverse faintly appeared behind Roosevelt's neck. It was a trifecta that few had ever seen combined in a single Roosevelt dime. The coin, examined over weeks by multiple experts, was deemed authentic and completely unaltered. At a private auction in New York attended by some of the biggest names in numismatics, it sold for a jaw-dropping $89,000. Today, the rare 1977 Roosevelt dime is considered a modern marvel among error coins. While millions were produced, only a fraction bear the unique flaws that now make them so desirable. These are coins born of quiet chaos, machines slightly out of sync, dies slightly off register, pressures just shy of perfection. And from that imperfection, they've emerged as treasures. The current market continues to climb, and collectors watch closely for any newly discovered varieties or errors tied to this year. Depending on the severity, clarity, and preservation of the error, a 1977 US dime has been known to command between $54,000 and $132,000 in today's market. A single coin, once worth 10 cents, now stands as a testament to the strange beauty of imperfection and the extraordinary stories that can lie within the ordinary. In 1984, the Roosevelt dime continued its humble journey through American commerce, an unassuming 10-cent piece carrying the image of a beloved president and the enduring symbols of strength, peace, and liberty. Minted across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the 1984 dime was meant to be like any other. The production was efficient, mechanical, and largely unremarkable, at least, that's how it appeared at the surface. But amid the orderly piles of freshly struck dimes, a flaw crept into the system, subtle yet potent enough to ripple across decades. The Roosevelt dime's design, in use since 1946, had grown familiar. Collectors rarely paid much attention to recent releases unless a clear anomaly jumped out, a double die, a missing clad layer, an off-center strike. But 1984 brought with it a different kind of mystery. Not one born from an obvious error, but from a convergence of slight deviations that, together, made a single dime worth more than a collector could have ever imagined. In a small Ohio town, a retired machinist named Harold, known among locals as a casual coin hoarder, came across a dime in a roll he'd exchanged from a neighborhood bank. He wasn't actively searching for anything valuable, he simply liked the weight of coins in his hands, the clinking sound of metal meeting metal. But as he held up a 1984 dime under the yellow glow of his desk lamp, he paused. There was something unusual about Roosevelt's face. The contours were oddly soft, almost bloated, as though the image had melted ever so slightly. And then he noticed it, the mintmark P was completely missing. Curious, he compared it to other 1984 dimes in the roll. All had the P mintmark clearly visible to the left of Roosevelt's neck. But this one didn't. It wasn't worn off. It simply wasn't there. He turned the coin over and scrutinized the reverse. The torch seemed slightly misaligned, the flames subtly leaning left. Even stranger, the United States of America lettering appeared thinner than normal, some letters slightly slanted. He brought the coin to a local appraiser, who was initially skeptical. But under 10x magnification, the anomalies became more pronounced. The missing mint mark was clean, no scratch, no rub, no erosion. It hadn't been worn away, it had never been struck. This pointed to a known but rare type of error, a filled die or a mint mark omission. The coin also had evidence of machine doubling on Roosevelt's profile, with a ghost-like shadow behind the lettering of Liberty. Harold sent the dime to a grading service, which returned it with the official designation, 1984 Roosevelt dime, missing mint mark, obverse doubling, MS-66. The news spread quickly. Collectors online debated its authenticity, and error specialists began hunting for patterns. Some argued that a small batch of dimes from early 1984 had been struck with a defective die, while others speculated the error resulted from a clogged die filled with grease, masking the mint mark during production. Either way, the result was a coin unlike others from its era. Within a year, more examples began surfacing, each slightly different. A schoolteacher in Nevada stumbled upon a 1984 D dime with a strange reverse. The torch flames were flattened, and the olive branch seemed incomplete, missing some of the finer leaf lines. Upon examination, the coin showed clear signs of a die deterioration error, where repeated striking had worn down the die, creating a ghosted and fuzzy image on the coin's surface. Meanwhile, a teenager in Tennessee who had recently taken up coin roll hunting found what appeared to be a double-struck dime. The first strike was clean, but the second, slightly off-center, left a partial impression overlapping the original image. Roosevelt's face looked like it had been duplicated with a shake of the die. That coin, authenticated and graded at MS-64, sold on an online auction for over $17,000. Word spread, and suddenly the 1984 Roosevelt dime wasn't just a 10-cent piece, it was a quiet legend in the making. Collectors began scouring their old change jars and mint rolls. Some uncovered off-center strikes, others found weak reverses with fading detail. One dealer in New Jersey reported a specimen with a distinct cud, an area where a portion of the die broke off, leaving a raised, malformed blob above the word Liberty. Another coin, found in Washington state, displayed a rare transitional error. Its core alloy showed signs of inconsistency, revealing copper hues where silver-colored clad should have been. That particular dime was sent to a metallurgical lab for testing, which confirmed a flawed bonding process during minting. What set the 1984 dime errors apart from others was their subtlety. Unlike dramatic blunders that were instantly obvious, these coins demanded close attention. Their rarity wasn't rooted in spectacle but in precision, a missing detail here, a faint doubling there. Collectors who typically overlooked Roosevelt dimes began treating 1984 as a year worth exploring deeply. A turning point came when a California collector presented a 1984 dime with what looked like a clash error. On the obverse, faint outlines of the torch and olive branch, elements from the reverse, were visible behind Roosevelt's head. This happened when two dies struck each other without a coin in between, leaving mirrored impressions on the die faces. That dime, submitted to multiple grading experts for confirmation, was deemed exceptionally rare and sold at a private auction for $46,000. As awareness grew, prices began to climb. Some errors fetched $20,000 to $30,000 depending on condition and rarity. By the late 2010s, the most desirable varieties, missing mint marks, strong obverse doubling, transitional alloys, became hot targets at coin conventions. A single auction in 2022 listed a 1984 P dime with three distinct errors: a missing mint mark, reverse die clash, and a subtle rotation. It sold after a heated bidding war for $81,000. Dealers began issuing price guides specifically addressing error varieties for 1984 Roosevelt dimes. The demand surged, not just from American collectors but from global numismatists intrigued by modern U.S. minting mishaps. The value of these dimes fluctuated, influenced by market trends and discoveries of new specimens. Some months saw spikes in interest, while others simmered with quiet anticipation. Then came a breakthrough. A coin collector from North Carolina found what is now considered one of the finest examples of a multi-error 1984 dime. The coin featured a missing mint mark, full obverse doubling, a reverse cud, and a rotated die strike, all within a coin graded MS67. It was pristine, preserved in a climate-controlled collection for decades without anyone realizing its potential. At a national auction, it became the centerpiece of the event, selling for a staggering $118,000 to a private investor with a passion for modern-era coins. Today, the 1984 Roosevelt dime is a reminder that even the most ordinary coins can hide stories, secrets, and staggering value. It lives in quiet pockets of America, waiting to be rediscovered by those with patience and curiosity. And depending on the clarity of its error and the sharpness of its strike, a single 1984 dime can command anywhere from $50,000 to $122,000, transforming a simple piece of spare change into an unforgettable treasure. In 2008, the Roosevelt dime was quietly minted across the nation, slipping into commerce as effortlessly as every other year's 10-cent piece. From the vast machinery at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, billions of coins passed through automated lines, struck with incredible precision. On paper, the 2008 dime wasn't designed to stand out. It followed the same design, the same clad composition, and the same circulation volume expectations as its predecessors. But within that volume, as the wheels of the minting machines turned day after day, something went subtly but significantly wrong. It began with a strange discovery made not in a coin shop or bank, but in a vending machine. A part-time college student named Marcus was fishing for change after buying a soda when he noticed one of the dimes had a sharp, unmissable rim, but the face looked off. Roosevelt's profile, usually sharp and stoic, appeared blurred around the neck, with faint ghosting along the jawline. The letters of Liberty appeared oddly stretched, as if they'd been pulled by invisible threads. Marcus pocketed it, not because he knew what it was, but because it looked different, and different, he thought, might mean valuable. That coin would sit in a desk drawer for almost a year before Marcus, out of boredom and a bit of online browsing, decided to compare it to other Roosevelt dimes. He noticed something peculiar: the coin was misaligned. Not grossly off-center, but rotated ever so slightly from its intended orientation. And there was more. The torch on the reverse side, the enduring symbol of liberty, showed weak definition in the flame, almost as if the die hadn't struck with full force. The oak and olive branches flanking the torch looked muddied, with leaves fading into the background. He submitted it to a coin forum where hobbyists quickly confirmed what he had: a rotation error coupled with possible die fatigue. But one expert spotted something even more rare: the coin exhibited partial collar strike characteristics. The rim was thicker on one side and almost vanished on the other. That meant the coin may have been struck while partially out of its collar, resulting in a warped edge. Suddenly, what Marcus assumed was a curiosity became a subject of excitement. Collectors who had long overlooked the 2008 Roosevelt dime began examining rolls. A numismatist in Oregon posted about a coin where Roosevelt's profile was doubled, clearly, visibly, and unusually crisp. Not mechanical doubling, which is common and generally unremarkable, but genuine hub doubling. The "In God We Trust" motto showed bold shadowing behind each letter, and Roosevelt's eye appeared almost doubled in outline. That coin, sent for grading, returned as MS68 with an obverse double die designation. Word spread, and error hunters began zeroing in on the 2008 series. The year had already been notable for U.S. currency due to changes and shifts in production, but the dime hadn't been expected to carry any significant variation. And yet, anomalies kept surfacing. A woman in Georgia found a 2008 dime with a full brockage on the reverse, meaning it had been struck with another coin still stuck between the dies, leaving a mirror image of Roosevelt's face impressed on the back where the torch should have been. That dime, in almost uncirculated condition, sold quietly to a private collector for $44,000. More varieties surfaced over the next year. One example, found by a postal worker in Michigan, showed signs of a dramatic die clash. With no coin between the dies during a strike, the images of the obverse and reverse clashed directly into each other, and when the next blank was struck, it bore the faint but visible outlines of this mistake. The olive branch could be seen behind Roosevelt's ear. His nose featured a ghostly outline of the torch's flame. It was as eerie as it was rare. The deeper collectors went, the stranger things got. A particularly baffling find emerged from a coin shop in Nevada, a 2008 dime struck on a copper planchet, intended for a penny. Somehow, in the cross-flow of coin production, a wrong metal blank had entered the dime press. The result? A copper-colored dime with all the details of Roosevelt's profile but none of the expected silver sheen. That coin drew attention from major grading houses, which confirmed its authenticity and labeled it as a wrong planchet error. Bidding for it at a 2022 convention reached over $172,000. The value trajectory for these error dimes was unpredictable at first. Early examples fetched $10,000 to $20,000, mostly due to scarcity and collector novelty. But as more specimens surfaced, with errors ranging from double dies and die clashes to partial collar strikes and planchet mix-ups, the appetite for these coins grew significantly. Each new discovery added a piece to the puzzle. The 2008 Roosevelt dime was, perhaps, one of the most quietly chaotic production years for the series in decades. Dealers began referring to 2008 as the ghost year for Roosevelt dimes. The errors were hidden, subtle, almost ghost-like in their execution. They weren't always apparent on casual inspection, requiring magnification and expertise to confirm. And that made them all the more desirable. Owning one became a mark of diligence, a testament to the collector's eye. Then came the twist that sent the numismatic world into a flurry. A longtime collector in Pennsylvania uncovered a 2008 dime with not one, but three errors stacked on top of each other: a 25% off-center strike, a reverse die clash, and partial clad layer peeling, exposing the copper core beneath. It was something no one had seen before in a single modern dime. When the coin was professionally graded, it earned the rare designation of MS66 multi-error specimen, and was listed for private sale. Despite receiving multiple offers, the collector held out. Eventually, a Japanese investor and coin enthusiast offered an eye-watering $113,000 for the piece, citing its uniqueness and the rising trend in modern error coin collecting. The deal was sealed with little fanfare, but the coin became an icon, an emblem of how easily overlooked modern coins could become rarities of staggering value. Today, the 2008 Roosevelt dime remains in circulation, largely dismissed by the casual observer. But hidden within everyday transactions, in piggy banks and parking meter returns, may lie the next discovery. A dime slightly lighter in weight. A torch not quite centered. A rim that feels just a bit too thick. These aren't flaws, they're silent clues. And for those willing to look closer, a 2008 dime with the right combination of errors can transform from pocket change to a treasure commanding anywhere from $40,000 to $113,000. A quiet coin with a loud legacy. In the year 2020, amidst a world transformed by unprecedented events and global uncertainty, the United States Mint carried on its mission, striking coins as steadily and mechanically as ever. At the Philadelphia and Denver mints, millions of Roosevelt dimes emerged from press lines, gleaming and uniform. At a glance, the 2020 dime was unremarkable, identical in design to those minted since 1946. But below the surface of routine and repetition, something had quietly gone wrong. And for those few with trained eyes and rare intuition, the 2020 Roosevelt dime would soon prove to be anything but ordinary. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. A man named Dennis, a retired postal clerk and part-time coin roll hunter from Idaho, spent his evenings unwrapping bank rolls and combing through coins by lamplight. He wasn't seeking anything particular, just the thrill of a find, a habit formed over decades. But one night, he noticed a 2020 dime that didn't behave like the others. It had a slight tilt to it, as if Roosevelt himself had been nudged by an invisible hand. The edges weren't sharp and crisp. They seemed warped, uneven, and unusually smooth in places. Intrigued, he set it aside. Days later, Dennis took a closer look. Under magnification, he realized the coin had no reeded edge. The grooves that defined dimes, so precise and familiar, were absent. It was almost as if the coin had skipped a key stage in its creation. More curiously, the reverse design seemed lightly off-center. The torch, flanked by the olive branch and oak, was slightly skewed, not perfectly centered as expected. And on the obverse, there was doubling. Not minor or imagined, but distinct. Roosevelt's lips, the base of his neck, and the date, 2020, all bore the telltale shadows of a double die. Dennis knew this wasn't normal. He contacted a fellow collector, and the coin was soon in the hands of a grading service. Their analysis confirmed his suspicion. The coin had been struck with a misaligned die, resulting in a slight rotation and off-center strike, compounded by a double die on the obverse. The missing reeded edge pointed to a rare smooth collar error, something that hadn't been seen in Roosevelt dimes of this year before. It was officially designated as a multi-error coin, graded MS-67, and marked the beginning of a quiet storm. Not long after, reports surfaced of other 2020 dimes exhibiting strange anomalies. One collector in Wisconsin found a dime with a starkly different error. Roosevelt's portrait had a broadstrike appearance. The rim was missing entirely, and the diameter was slightly wider than standard. The fields, normally mirror-flat in uncirculated coins, were wavy, as if the metal had spilled slightly outward upon striking. This wasn't just a minting defect. It was a clue that something more widespread was happening with the 2020 dime. RUN.IN Tennessee, a young woman purchasing coffee received a dime in change that looked unusually shiny. It didn't take long to realize it wasn't made of the normal clad composition. The coin had the weight and ring of a Roosevelt dime but lacked the nickel sheen. It was later confirmed to be struck on a foreign planchet, likely a blank intended for another country's currency that had found its way into the U.S. Mint's machinery. This type of error, especially in modern years, is exceptionally rare and highly coveted. As coin forums lit up with photos and questions, a broader pattern emerged. A disproportionate number of errors were appearing in 2020 dimes. Some coins bore rotation errors, where flipping them vertically didn't align the obverse and reverse as expected. Others showed strike-through marks, likely caused by debris caught between die and planchet. A few dimes even bore clashed die marks, faint outlines of reverse details appearing on the obverse side, and vice versa, signaling that the dies had collided without a planchet between them and transferred ghostly images onto the next coin. For months, collectors traded theories. Some speculated that pandemic-related labor disruptions had affected quality control at the mint. Others believed an unusually high number of old or misaligned dies were used longer than they should have been. Regardless of the cause, the result was the same: a wave of error dimes hiding in plain sight, released into circulation in a year already full of uncertainty. The most spectacular find came from a numismatist in California who was reviewing a batch of coins when he spotted something unbelievable: a 2020 dime that had been double-struck, with the second strike landing almost 40% off-center. Roosevelt's face overlapped with itself, the date was doubled in two locations, and the reverse was flattened along one edge where the second strike bent the coin's surface. This coin, unique in its class, was authenticated and auctioned privately to an advanced collector for a staggering sum. The values of these error dimes began rising, quietly at first. A basic misaligned die error might earn a few $100s. But as examples of double strikes, off-metal planchets, and strong double dies appeared in high-grade condition, the market responded. One known MS-68 2020 Roosevelt dime with a dramatic die clash and full broadstrike sold at an online auction for over $38,000. That sale signaled a turning point. Dealers began scrutinizing their 2020 dime stock more closely. Roll hunters, long used to passing over modern coins, were suddenly zeroing in on a coin most had thought too young to matter, but what truly drove the value higher was the coin's timing. 2020 was a landmark year. For future collectors, it represented not just a minting year, but a cultural and historical marker. Owning a rare error from that specific year carried symbolic weight, an error coin born out of a year defined by disruption. That context amplified demand, especially for those coins that combined technical rarity with pristine condition. Today, the 2020 Roosevelt dime has earned a place in modern numismatic lore. While millions were struck, only a handful bear the traits that separate them from the rest: coins that were subtly, precisely flawed in a way that collectors dream of. They aren't always obvious. A faint tilt. A missing groove. A ghostly doubling on the cheek of a familiar face. For those lucky or observant enough to find one, the reward can be staggering. A genuine 2020 Roosevelt dime with a confirmed error, especially if graded MS-66 or higher, can command between $30,000 and $88,000. A simple coin with 10-cent value in the eyes of most. But in the hands of the right collector, it's a legacy of imperfection.